Hi, welcome. I'm Fazia Costi, and today we are going to be talking with Andrea Beach. She's an entrepreneur, investor, humanitarian, and a highly acclaimed life and business coach. She's empowered thousands of people from all around the world. Having started, grown, and sold several successful companies, she is considered a leading authority on business, technology, and consumer behavior. So welcome to the show, Andrea.
Thank you so much for having me on.
I'm really excited to have you on. I was reading your bio, I was reading your information, and you have an amazing life, an amazing background. I'm sure your personal life is just as amazing as your professional life. I want to talk a little bit about who you are before we get started on some questions. Would you mind sharing a little bit about you with our listeners?
Oh, sure, of course. So thanks again for having me on. It's nice to be able to talk about the journey,
Yes.
because so many people want to talk about the destination or arriving. And honestly, it took me a little longer than I want to admit that it really is about enjoying the journey. So for me, I grew up normal family, broken home. Parents were divorced at 6. They both remarried. I floated around between parents and didn't really have any good role models when it came to any kind of financial success or business success at all. Everybody was scrapping just to get by, and not a lot of good relationship role models too. Wonderful, beautiful people, just not very lucky in love and didn't have the good habits or the good behaviors that basically afforded them the relationships that they were striving for. So I had to figure it all out on my own. I had to read hundreds of books and attend every webinar, seminar. I interviewed people. I've listened to all kinds of podcasts, and I appreciate yours. And I learned, honestly, by doing it wrong. I think every possible way there was to do it wrong. And landed on some success. And that doesn't mean it was easy. I stumbled along both in business and in my personal life. But I'm a mother and couldn't be happier about that. And I've been married, I've been divorced, I've had all kinds of relationships in my life, with siblings and friends and everyone else that have really guided me along my journey. And you're right, I am in a really beautiful, wonderful place. And I'm so grateful for that, from where I've landed at this point.
Well, I really want to thank you for your candidness and your honesty in talking about your background, your life. I think a lot of times we hold that information so close that we don't share it with anybody. And there's a lot of people out there that feel like they're also the only ones out there experiencing difficulties. And I think when we share, we kind of connect with other humans a little bit better. And
Yeah,
and I
especially with
really,
social media being so fake these days. It's nice to see behind the veil.
that is a very true statement. Absolutely. I agree with you. So I really want to thank you for sharing your information there. So your newest venture is Life Unleashed Online. What inspired you to start this website? What is this website about?
Thank you for asking. I'm so excited about it. It is my life's passion, truly. I've had lots of companies and lots of business ventures I've been excited about, but this one truly is my legacy. This is my purpose and my mission. Took me a while to figure it out, but I finally got it here. So I mentioned some of the learnings and the trials and errors I had along the way. All of those things that finally led me to finding happiness, success, financial freedom, total health and wellness, all those different areas. I looked around and noticed how many of my friends, and women in particular, men as well, but I'm focused on the women, got to the middle of their life and thought, well, this isn't quite the fairy tale I thought it was going to be. They find themselves single again in middle age, and it's a whole new ball game nowadays.
Sure.
Or maybe in a relationship that has lost the spark, or it's boring and routine, or there've been some snags. They're not financially where they want to be. Maybe they've been in the same career for 35 years and they hate it, but they don't know what else to do. And I realized if I could figure it out and I could bust free and out of all the conventional boxes that we put ourselves in, I could help other people do the same thing. So I spent over a year in secret putting together the best kind of advice and tips and strategies that I had ever learned or read or heard from the world's leading experts and authorities, along with all my personal experience, into, I'll call it kind of a greatest hits. And I broke it down by categories. So there's things in there for your love life, for your other relationships, for your career, business, and entrepreneurship, which is, of course, my background. For any type of health, wellness, your beauty, all the things that matter specifically to middle-aged women, and how to level up and actually break through and actually enjoy the life that you want. So I've put it all together into one convenient place online so you can enjoy it however and wherever you want.
So does this website cost? Is there a membership? How does somebody access it?
That's a good question. So you can come onto the website, look through all the courses. You can purchase courses a la carte. There's master classes, there's mini courses and focus content. So there's really something at every price point. We do have a membership, and the benefit of that is you get unbelievable discounts. It's kind of like a Costco type of a deal. So the benefits far outweigh any cost. We do have member events because there's a community factor that goes along with that as well. You mentioned not wanting to feel like we're the only one out there.
Right.
It's a big component of this. So that's another huge benefit to membership, but you can do as little or as much as you want.
That is fantastic. What do you feel is the most important aspect of Life Unleashed Online? What is
That's
what
a
is
good
the
question.
biggest what is the biggest takeaway from that website?
So I'll give you mine. Now, somebody
Okay.
else may have a different opinion, but I think my biggest takeaway is helping people discover their true purpose, because we're not taught how to do that. And we fumble around in the dark, and sometimes we make decisions based on the people that we meet, or, the cards that life deals us. And then we kind of end up in a situation and go, what am I doing? And so I really feel like at middle age, and it doesn't mean that we can't benefit at any age, right? But I just am really focused on that, because you may want to reinvent yourself for the second half of your life. You're empty nesters or about to be. There's things that are changing for you. But how do you know what your purpose is? And to me, that's the biggest takeaway from Life Unleashed, is finally there's a place where I've broken it down, and there's a section called Purpose-Driven Life that's brand new. It's just coming out. It's funny you mentioned that. But there is a masterclass called Legacy and Purpose. And I would love to offer all your listeners a special discount on that if you'd be interested.
Absolutely. Please tell us how they can get a hold of that
So
offer.
If they put in FOS20, FOS20, they'll get 20% off the Legacy and Purpose Masterclass.
Okay. And I'll put that in the information box on our YouTube channel. So when you go look for that YouTube link, you can find that information there. Yeah, thank you so much. I'm sure our listeners will love that, and hopefully they'll take advantage of that. How does Life Unleashed Online relate to other endeavors that you've had, and how does it relate to your background? What brought you to that point, I guess, is what I want to know.
Good question. So I had spent most of my career in early days in sales, and then stumbled into technology. I wish I could take credit for it, but it was a total accident. And I denied it for a few years. In fact, I kept finding myself solving technology problems for companies just so I could get to what I was trying to sell them. And after about 3 years, I went, oh, maybe I'm in the technology business. So it just tells you how, people stumble around in the dark to figure out their life path. That was me.
I actually think sales is a relationship business. And it sounds to me like you knew how to solve a problem. You had a relationship with your customers.
That's true. And I genuinely cared about their success. And so moving through the technology phases, I mean, we started early days in mobile back in early 2000s, before there were any smartphones. It was razors and flip phones and Blackberries, Palm Pilots. Anyway, so
I think I've had one of every one of those.
Yeah, I miss a couple of those actually. So we started in early days of technology, and I've owned several companies along the way. Some have been total failures. Some have been mediocre at best, but I've had a couple of big wins along the way. I've learned a lot. And so the learnings, trying to, figure out who I was in the midst of all of that. I feel like early days, I was an owner, and then I moved into more of a president and eventually a CEO kind of role. Then I had multiple businesses happening at the same time. So, I took more of a portfolio approach and had other people that were way better than me, helping manage or run and do things like financials and HR and stuff that makes me twitch. And so it was also relationally about surrounding myself with people who were better and smarter than me to work together as kind of a SEAL Team 6, if you will, to accomplish these missions of growing these businesses. And that's how I was able to do them simultaneously.
Can you tell us a little bit about maybe a couple of your businesses? Like, tell us about one of your big wins and one of your big lessons learned.
I love how you put that. Sure. So early days, we had started off with, I'll tell you a failure that led to a success.
Okay.
Because it was definitely a failure, but huge lessons learned. So I had realized that so many people are exhausted from work and their life that when they finally get date night with their spouse or whatever, they're like, what do you want to do? I don't know. What do you want to do? And they end up doing the same 2-3 things over and over again. And they're usually bored with it, but nobody has the ability to think beyond it. So my idea was to create a virtual concierge platform online where it would learn your likes and dislikes and based on your area and things that you were interested in. You didn't want to go to smoky bars, you love jazz, you like bourbon. What are the things you're into? It would recommend things based on upcoming events in your area. And you could set parameters on. It sounded all great. It was way harder technologically speaking, but we did figure it out. We built it without any focus group, without any information. We just made assumptions, which I recommend you don't do that in business. And as a result, we spent all this time and money and launched it and then just expected it to be a huge success, and it pretty much fell flat. Our financial model was we were dependent on sponsors and all the big brands to underwrite it. The big brands said, chicken egg, we need millions of users before we're interested, but we had to have the sponsors to bring in the events to then bring the users. Anyway, so that was a big failure. But the learnings from that created another technology company off the back of solving some of the technological problems of how do I engage customers better? How do I let them know about upcoming events or specials or promotions? And in early days, I started with luxury brands have no desire to coupon. They don't want to discount.
No.
Their relationship with their customers and their clients, especially back then, was being disrupted because radio was being disrupted. Sirius and XM had merged. And so people were cutting out commercials. People were no longer grabbing that newspaper every morning, so they weren't able to get them there. Spam filters over email were a thing. Anyway, there was just block after block after block.
Yeah, a lot of changes were happening.
So we created the first platform for SMS. So talking about texting way back then, it was called IntelliText. And the idea was to create dynamic SMS texting. So it would actually send a personalized message. It would say, good morning, Jonathan. And it was all geolocation based. So if you were next to, a Ferrari dealership, for example, it might say, check out the new Ferrari F-150 sneak peek that's being launched November 10th. And you could click a link and it would actually allow you to see what was going on and then book a one-on-one scheduled test drive or something like that. The brands were so blown away, not by what I thought was so cool about the test drive part, because remember I came from sales. They said, whoa, wait a minute. You can send a text message that says, good morning, Jonathan. And when I first sold it, I didn't know how we were going to do that. So I said, yeah, of course we can. Because a previous business I'd owned was, I had an on-demand digital book printing company. So we could do variable data and printing. So I thought, well, surely we could do it over texting. I didn't know it didn't exist. Nobody told me it wasn't possible at the time. So I sold it. And then I turned around to my technological team. I said, guys, we better figure it out. I just sold this. So we did. We figured it out. And that was the beginning of what became a very successful win, which was a company called IntelliText.
Wow, that's amazing. Yeah, I think I love the story of how you took a failure or lessons learned and you've created such a successful story out of it. So I think that's very inspiring for our listeners. So I really appreciate you sharing that. Thank you.
Sure.
Who is the largest or who is your target audience, I should say, for Life Unleashed Online? Is there a particular group that you have in mind other than middle-aged women? And when you say middle-aged, is there like an age range that we're talking about?
Pretty broad. I say 35 to 70. But as soon as I say that, I have 20-year-old girls come up to me all the time and say, we need just as much help because we're just as lost and confused about career and our love life and everything. And I have women in their 80s who've come in and said, can you help me with advice on my sex life? And I love that. I think it's amazing. So I'd say 35 to 70, but honestly, I really should broaden it to say all women. It's any woman who wants to better themselves, grow, reinvent themselves, and finally break through to where they can live the life that they've ultimately always dreamed of, because I promise you it's possible. I'm living proof. I've been as low as you can be in pretty much every category, and I've seen all the heights. So I am living proof that if you follow this advice and do the strategies and tips that we put forward, they work. They really, really work. But you said what else besides age? I would say it's female professionals predominantly. And the reason why that I say that is because you can work inside the home. It has nothing to do with that. It has to do with the mindset of being a professional. If you have something that you're willing to work toward and grow and learn and perfect as a craft or as a career, you have the right mindset. And it doesn't matter what that is. It could be a side hustle. It could be an actual job that you have. Or, if you're a homemaker and you're like, you know what, it's time for me to do something that is mine. That's the kind of mentality that'll get you success.
What do you think brings you the most success? Is it your perseverance? Is it your ideas? I mean, what do you think is or maybe there's a combination of things that helps you become successful? What is it for you?
It is for sure a combination of things. And it depends on what it is that you're trying to be successful at. So perseverance is huge. Just never quit. If you are so in love with the idea of what it is that you are trying to accomplish, and it has good reasons behind it, just never quit. Continue to think through the solutions and ways that you can actually accomplish it. And if you never quit, you really never fail, right? You're just learning until you eventually get there. So perseverance is key. I would say relationships, which you already nailed right at the beginning, is absolutely right. You are often the sum of your relationships. So if you look around at your kind of 5 best friends, on average, you pretty much make about the same amount of money. You're about a same level of health. Your relationships are all about the same. So be careful who you're friends with. Sometimes you may have to level up on your friendships. And we do have some information on how to do that, because people say, I don't know where to meet better people, but it's in there. And then I would say the other thing is be very intentional with your plan. People often say, I'm not happy. I don't like where I am. And when I say, great, well, what do you want? They typically will say some version of, well, I don't know, just not this. Well, that's not going to work, because if you have no idea where you want to aim for or where you're headed, then there's no roadmap or way to get there. And if you say, I want to have this level of income, this type of life, and then you get 30 miles on your journey and then realize, no, actually, I want to go over here. That's fine. At least you're moving. So you have to have a clear vision.
I love it. Yeah. A clear vision, I think, is incredibly important. Yeah, I can't even tell you how amazing that is. So one of the things I found interesting about you is that you're also a hypnotherapist. So I'm a hypnotherapist as well. And I love using that as a tool to help people. But you also have neuro-linguistic programming background and design human engineering background. How do these factor into being a successful tool for working with Fortune 500 companies, mentoring a variety of startup and growth stage companies, and creating successful programs for transformation and success?
So I'll answer that by telling you a funny story.
All right, let's hear it.
I had geeked out over human behavior from a very young age. And I kept my hypnosis. I worked with clients and at a place called Positive Changes Hypnosis Center in Atlanta, which is no longer around, but she was amazing, the owner. So I worked there, and I continued to craft my NLP and my DHE and all of my behavioral side kind of as a passion. Had nothing to do with my sales, my technology, all the other stuff I was doing to build a business, until I was in a situation where we had done quite a bit of work with Coca-Cola and had a very good relationship with them and their agency of record. And they wanted us to build something for March Madness for Final Four. They wanted a mobile app that had like 72 features, and it just, behaviorally speaking, it wasn't going to fly. It wasn't going to work. There were technological issues as well with the dome and everything, but it was the behavior that I looked at and said, it's not going to work. And it was an uncomfortable meeting because I told them we're going to pass. And I don't know if if you've ever worked with Coca-Cola, but they don't like being told no. So they said, no, you don't understand. We want you to build it. We kind of want it this way. I said, no, you don't understand. Behaviorally speaking, it's going to fail. And I explained the reasons why. And they said, well, what do we do? And I said, well, you're in Atlanta. You'll find 5 other companies that'll put themselves out of business trying to build this for you. It's not going to work. You really should do this instead. They said, we've already got budget approval. It's already too far down the road. They got mad. They actually stormed out of the room.
Wow. And
the agency, I'll never forget. They're amazing. They're just, all the blood drained out of their face. They just kind of sat there like, what just happened? Everything was fine. They did hire another agency, a guy that I knew actually. And sadly it failed. And that company did go out of business about 1.5 years later. I have no idea what he's doing now, but that was a life lesson I'm sure they learned. And Coca-Cola came back 1 year later and said, so what was that you were talking about again? And what do we need to be thinking about? And I said, oh, okay, now you're interested in the behavioral aspect. And from that moment on, I never did another RFP. We never again put our ideas and our behavioral expertise out for free, because we figured out that was the secret sauce. And we've worked with AT&T, UPS, NASA, Ford, Chevy, Warner Brothers. I mean, so many blue chip brands. And honestly, I think the reason for the success was the behavioral aspect. It's almost like the lens or the filter. When you look at a piece of technology, just for what it is, it looks really great in the lab or on an RFP. But until you battle test it against people's beliefs and how they frame things in their minds and their behaviors, it's not going to be as successful. So, a smartphone in the hands of a 9-year-old girl, it might as well be a totally different device in the hands of an 82-year-old man. They both use them, but you wouldn't even know they were the same piece of equipment.
Right.
So looking at it as a one-size-fits-all doesn't work. And so pulling in the behavioral background really gave us that first major hockey stick of growth, and set us apart. That became the secret sauce. And since then, I thought, why did I wait so long to do this? It's become the kind of red thread, if you will, that's become the common denominator between every business that I've owned ever since.
Wow. So if you were going to advise our listeners, would that be your biggest advice, is to pay attention to the behavioral aspect of whatever they're doing for their behavior of their customers? Think it through about what the behavior of their customers would be.
And ask, don't make the mistakes I made, which was making a lot of assumptions. I assumed if I thought something was cool, everybody thought it was cool. Or if something was needed, that they would do it. And an example of that is I built, you probably know it, the technology where you walk into a restaurant and they say, we'll text you when your table's ready.
Right.
Sounds really, really simple. There's actually interfaces and a backend system that's a little more complicated. We built that early days, like probably 10 years too early. Tried to take it into huge restaurant groups. I'll keep their names out. And they said, nobody will do that. Nobody wants to text anything. And we said, well, those old little buzzer thingies are really, they're not hygienic and people steal them and they get broken and all these. They said, no, nobody's ever going to want to text anything. So first of all, we were too early. We made the assumption that they were ready for it and the market was not. The second thing was, we didn't have any data. We just made the assumption that restaurants would be interested in cool technology that would make their operations more efficient. They didn't have the money because their margins are so low. They didn't have the knowledge of cool technology that was up. They're so busy running their business, and they didn't have the appetite, pardon the pun, to really bring on something new. And so we were making all kinds of assumptions that restaurants were the perfect market for us because they had a huge need. But because we didn't do any research or think about behavior or really get kind of in the trenches of their life, it failed. That was another couple of failures.
What would you have done differently for that? Like, would you have come in, 10 years later? You would have talked to them. Okay.
I would have just talked to the restaurant owners and said, this is what we're thinking about doing and building, and it'll do this for you. Here's all the benefits, and, but here's how much it might cost, and let them say, we wouldn't do that. Or the only way we would do that is F, X, Y, and Z, and we would have built it differently.
Interesting. Okay. That's fantastic. Um, let's talk a little bit about AI. It's been in the news a lot. It's something everyone's talking about. As an expert in artificial intelligence, what is your prognosis for the future of AI? How do you see it building out? How do you see it benefiting us as in our daily lives and things like that?
We could do 3 podcasts on just this. Right off the top of my head, I would say it will absolutely change our lives in ways that we can't imagine right now. Lots of people have said, lots of very influential, very smart people have talked about the fact that it will be as significant as the internet, as smartphones, as electricity, things like that. And at first blush, you think, wow, those are big statements. But the more you dig into it and you start realizing what all it can do, you think, oh, that's true. I think almost immediately, this is not in a 5 or 10 year kind of time frame. This is now. I think almost immediately it will start changing the way we work in such a way that, remember I mentioned these, ladies that have maybe been at their career for 35, 40 years, don't know what else to do. There's all kinds of reports that say over 300 million jobs will be lost to AI. I don't actually believe the jobs will be lost to AI. I believe there'll be this massive transformation where people will come in and take those seats that are probably paid less money. They're probably remote workers, and they are the ones who'll be able to wield AI. So they're going to transform the way we work. And so now is the time. And I have a whole masterclass on career that talks about how to leapfrog over everyone else around you in your company, your career, whatever, and leverage AI for your own personal benefit. So that's on the courses page if people want to check that out as well. But the idea is to use AI as a tool, not to be scared of it or think about, ways that it might displace you, but how can you leverage it? And the cool thing is it's a level playing field. It's not like people have gone, to college or 14 years through, specialty schooling. Everybody's figuring it out at the same time. And so you might as well figure it out from the luxury of your own home in your PJs and your fuzzy slippers, and figure out ways that you can add more value with AI and create new businesses or a side hustle. If a new business scares you to death, there's all kinds of cool ways that you can do that now to where it's not as scary. Or if you're in a career that you're miserable in, figure out how to reinvent yourself inside that industry or a totally different industry using AI. And there's a lot of different ways that we can help coach you to do that.
And it reminds me of I don't know, probably 30 years ago when robotics was coming into play and everybody said, oh, everyone's going to be out of work. Robots are going to do all the work. Factories are not going to need people anymore. It really scared a lot of people. But now that you see how robotics works in factories, the people are not gone. They're still there. They use robotics as a tool. And I agree with you. I think that's what's going to happen with AI, but I'm really curious and excited to see how the transformation happens, because I think we're always scared of the unknown. And this is a big unknown, but I think it's also really exciting.
There's a couple of ways that people will lean in and really excel. And so the behavioral aspect is like front and center. So when you have strong EQ, which is emotional intelligence, and you've got the ability to communicate very well, if you can manage teams and you've got control over behavioral aspects of the team that you're working with, you become so much more valuable, because instead of having armies of workers to get these things done, you'll have much, much smaller teams. Whereas before, companies might have had 130 people on a floor, for example, accomplishing the same goals. Now you might have 10, but because of AI and, and smart machines and smart robotics and things like that, you don't need that many people. That makes the 10 so much more valuable. So learning into soft skills, like how to incentivize people, how to ideate and come up with creative ideas. the smart machines are not doing that yet. They're not coming up with beautiful artwork in a way like we can as humans. They're taking the things that we give them and then informing it. So the more we can lean into creativity, ingenuity, soft skills like communication and empathy and EQ and communication and relational skills, those are the folks that are going to win.
I love it. I absolutely love it. I think you're onto something there. I agree. Definitely agree. Let's go ahead and talk a little bit about something different. Given your experience as a leading authority on technology and consumer behavior, what trends do you expect to see in the next few years?
Well, we just talked about some of the biggest. So AI obviously is huge. The consumer version of AI is evolving literally as we're on this podcast.
Right.
So the applications for it and how it's going to change everything from personalized medicine to how we build buildings. I also believe that humanoid robots are going to become more the norm. And it's not that they're going to take over the world the way a lot of people think. And I understand the concerns, and we can have a whole separate conversation about the concerns, but
Sure.
how we utilize the robotics, if you already look at things like open heart surgery and eye surgery and some of the ways that robots are being used now, that will be another trend that we'll see, and kind of the marriage between AI and the robots, which that's where people get freaked out. And I can understand why, but we will see more of that because it's already in the works and happening. Other technological trends is we're going to see things like more holograms that are going to be used for everything from instruction manuals. You buy that bookshelf from IKEA and it's in 400 pieces, somebody walking you through in a hologram how to actually build that, things like that are very useful for everyday practical advice. We're going to see a lot more e-learning. There's an explosion on e-learning right now. Telehealth is also exploding. Mobile gaming, personal betting, things like that are all exploding. So anything that's personalized from a technological standpoint is going to become more personal.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's fantastic. As a behaviorist, what changes have you seen over the last 3 years during the pandemic? And now that we're no longer in the pandemic, but COVID still exists, what changes have you seen over the last 3 years, and how do you see it moving forward?
Well, people got really used to working from home, and a lot of people didn't want to go back to work or prefer the hybrid model. And we found a lot of efficiencies in that model, less commuting, less burnout, and people really actually being excited about the work they do, and also being able to multitask, whereas they had maybe one job, now they've got a couple, but they actually enjoy what they do more. So that's one. The other thing is the efficiencies that were forced upon small to mid-sized businesses during COVID, because they realized they had been prolonging the inevitable where they had to update their systems, whether it be software or their, telecommunication systems, whatever it was.
Right.
And all of a sudden they were forced to do it or, fade away. So there's been a lot of advancements for businesses that way. And they've kind of said, oh, that worked really well. Why aren't we doing more of that? And so now they have it in their budgets and their plans to really put more emphasis on efficiencies, specifically through technology.
Well, I know for me personally, I feel like since I went from being in an office to completely online, working completely remotely, my clients no longer have to spend time driving after school, so they get to save that time. There's a lot more that I can do using online resources, and
Sure.
I no longer have to travel,
Right.
going to my office and coming back, which means I have at least an extra hour out of every day that I can do something else. And that's really nice.
Yeah.
And during the day I can go have lunch in my own dining room, and
right.
I don't have to worry about traffic. And it's been a really nice transition. I never thought a pandemic would be something, or would leave something nice behind, and it did. In one way it did. It left something nice behind. So
there's always a positive in every crisis. You just got to look for it.
Absolutely. So one of the things we talked about before we started recording, I think we talked about your interest in cars,
Oh,
You
yeah.
had mentioned something about that. And you're interested in racing, particularly supercars. And you drive a Lexus race car RCF. How did you get interested in this sport?
I think I've always been interested in cars since I was a little girl. I remember my parents telling me that one of my favorite toys was, they weren't Matchbox cars, but they were small. They were about this big. And I had a police car, I had an ambulance, a fire truck, and then there was some kind of, I don't even know what it was back then, some kind of race car or something. And they said I always wanted to play with those, but specifically the race car. So I guess it's always been in me. I had a situation happen. I was doing workout in Vegas. I have never told this story, which is funny.
Well, I'm glad you're telling it now.
You put me on the spot. So I was in a meeting, and about 10 people in the room. And all of a sudden, one of the guys said, Andrea, don't you have a flight at like 1:20? And we all looked down and went, oh, there's no way. Like I wasn't going to make it. So one of the guys in the meeting said, I got you. Let's go. And we literally grabbed my suitcase and ran like full speed running. And I'm thinking, he's crazy. There's no way I'm going to make it. As he's running out the door, he yells, Ferrari or Tesla? And I said, what? He goes, Ferrari or Tesla? Well, I had been in a Ferrari before. I'd never ridden in a Tesla. This is when they just first came out with the faster model. So I said, Tesla. So he throws my suitcase in, we jump in and we take off. And I probably shouldn't say, we're going about 130 and made it to McCarran. We ended up pulling up at the valet at the airport, which is one of the most amazing things about Vegas airport is the valet. And he apparently was known there because, you know, he flew a lot and he did a lot of work at the airport. So he knew a backdoor way for me to kind of cut through things. And I made it right to my gate. We pushed through some door and literally I was right across from my gate. It was a really cool experience. So I made my flight. But it wasn't about the flight. It was about the drive.
Absolutely.
And I remember thinking, I need to do this more often. I loved it. So almost immediately after that, I went to Petit Le Mans. And, you know, I was in podium club and enjoying like the best view, the best, you know, got to meet a lot of the drivers, a lot of the teams. And I think that's when I was really hooked.
That's an amazing story. You know, it's funny. The right people always show up at the right time, don't they?
Yeah, well, he definitely got me hooked. I don't know if it was good or bad, but I'm in now.
You know, I think it's a good thing. I think life is about experiences, and that just sounds like a fun experience. You know, it sounds like a really good experience. You not only met your goal of getting to the airport, but you did it in style and you had fun.
Yes, we can
skirting
into the ballet.
It sounds like a movie scene, doesn't it?
It actually was. It was just like that.
Yeah, I mean, I can picture it. All right, so you're definitely a woman of many diverse interests. We've talked a little bit about a lot of different things, but one of the things we haven't talked about yet is your interest in wine, your wine collection. Can you tell us a little bit about that? And I know that you also have an interest in bourbon. So let's talk a little bit about your bourbon collection. So I too love wines, but I'm not into bourbon. So I'm really curious to learn a little bit more about your wine collection and your bourbon collection.
Okay. Do you drink sweet wine?
I like Chardonnays.
Okay. I had a feeling. So Chardonnays are good. So Chardonnays are buttery, whereas like a Pinot Grigio or something like that is more like a crisp green apple. So it really just depends on your personal taste. I have a fun fact. I'm allergic to white wine. Ooh. Like, have you ever heard of anybody that's allergic to white wine? It's always red. Yeah. And it's always because of the tannins, and it has nothing to do with that. It's something about how the grapes are processed, or I don't know, it was explained to me years ago, but either way, that's kind of sad because I can't drink champagne. There's a lot of sangria and stuff that I want that I can't have, but I do love reds, and I love dry, oaky, non-sweet red wine. My go-to varietal is typically Malbec. But if I'm not going to be drinking a Malbec, I love some good red blends. I love some good Italian and Spanish wines as well, like a Montepulciano or some type of just a complete blend. Some of the best wines that are out there that are really good value come from Costco. This isn't like a plug for Costco. but they have such low margins. They're like 5% margin on their wine. So if you can find something there that you like, it's not a huge, selection, but if you find something that you like, get a case of it because it's good. So that's predominantly what my collection is made up of, is dry, kind of oaky reds, full bodied.
And how did you get into bourbons?
Again, another story I've literally never told anybody. You're getting all the good stuff
Well,
from me
let's
today.
hear it. I want to hear it.
So I didn't drink alcohol until I was 40.
Okay.
Not really for any, there was not a religious reason, I just didn't. I was a professional dancer. I was a ballroom dancer and a choreographer. And I did stuff like that when I was much younger. And my coaches would have killed me if I ever, even drank Coca-Cola or sweet tea or anything like that. They would have, not been happy. So I just never drank because it just wasn't part of my lifestyle. I was kind of an athlete. So it wasn't really part of my life. And then I merged my company, one of my companies. I told you about IntelliText.
Yes.
I merged it with another company out of Las Vegas and formed a new joint venture, which I became the CEO of that company. And as I started working with these guys in Vegas, and again, I was the only female, so it was all men, they drank like fish. And they could handle it, by the way, so that, they would have a lot, like sometimes 10, 12 drinks a night, and they were still talking, business. And here I was, the little bitty lightweight, and they nicknamed me the Southern Belle Peanut because they thought, oh, isn't she cute? We'll just put her over there. So I kind of had some stuff to prove in that room, but I thought, well, I at least need to have a drink. And I didn't know what to drink. I didn't know anything about it really. So I tried vodka, I tried gin, tried different things. Bourbon seemed to be the most palatable for me. And I could have a drink and then maybe two, and I could still, be talking business. I thought I better stop right there. I didn't want to be at 10 a night, but that's how I got into it, was because I thought I had to be part of the cool kids club. Honestly, I felt like I needed to be able to hang with the guys. And I really didn't care if I liked it or not. It was just something to be in my hand and make me feel like I was relevant and like I belonged there. And then eventually I actually developed a real taste for it. But then unfortunately, I got used to the high dollar Vegas, top shelf, the best bourbon. So I couldn't really drink the cheap stuff. And anytime I would try or experiment with new bourbons, I kept liking new ones and different types. And so I started a collection.
Good for you. Much like you, I didn't drink till I think I was like 39.
Oh, we have that in common.
Yeah, I was very much into health and fitness, and once my kids got to a little bit of a school age, I thought, I can relax.
Yeah. Time for mama.
I think I can relax. So yeah, I enjoy a glass of wine with dinner and things like that. I'm not probably as into it as you are. I don't have a huge collection or anything like that, but I can enjoy it. So that's fantastic. I want to let our listeners know that they can find you, or where they can find you. And if you would like to give out your contact information, now would be a really good time.
Sure. So if you want to go to YouTube, it's LifeUnleashedOnline. And you can also go to the website, and there's all kinds of contact information on there, which is LifeUnleashedOnline. And that's probably the best place to find me. Of course, I'm also on LinkedIn.
Yes. No, I appreciate that. I have one last question for you. What advice would you give your 20-year-old self? If you were to go back in time, what advice would you give yourself?
It's really simple. Never settle. When I was 20, I had come up through some pretty hard times, and I was pretty much out on my own from the time I was about 13. My mom passed away, and my dad was remarried to someone that would probably prefer I wasn't around. And so I wasn't. And so I had, I did everything. I waited tables, I bartended, I sold home security systems, vacuum cleaners door to door. I was still a straight A student and graduated with honors and ended up at University of Georgia as an international business major, but I worked 3 jobs while I was there and kept bouncing around trying to figure life out. And because of that upbringing and that feeling of not being grounded, I think I kind of settled for whatever I got. For example, I would I would be given a hand-me-down, prom dress or something like that. And I would go, oh, it's fine. I used to say that all the time. Oh, that's fine. And, do you want this to eat? Oh, sure, that's fine. And it wasn't until later in life that I realized me settling for something that was less than what I really, really wanted meant not only was I not dreaming big enough, but I was allowing myself to just coast through life kind of right under where I thought I really wanted to be or deserved. And so not only was I not striving for the right type of life, the lifestyle that I wanted, but I was settling in every area. Everything was just okay, or, oh, if that's it, oh, it's good enough. And so I would tell my 20-year-old self, never settle, never. It's better to wait until you're in your 40s to get married to find the right one. It's better to wait until you really, really know the vacation you want to go on and you save up for it and go on that 5-star vacation and live it. And the whole time you're there, don't be going, I can't believe I'm paying this much for don't do that to yourself. Just live it, fully be in it. Life is not a dress rehearsal. Just live it and enjoy the heck out of it. And that is the best advice I would give my 20-year-old self, is never settle again.
I think that is fantastic advice. And I really want to thank you so much for coming on the show today and sharing your story and sharing your success with our listeners. So for those of you who'd like to get in touch with Andrea Beach, you can go to her website. And once again, if you don't mind sharing that.
Sure. It's LifeUnleashedOnline.
All right. Thank you so much. And if you're looking to get a hold of me, you can go to my website, executivefunctioncoachaz.com. Or if you're interested in our magazine or podcast, you can go to 54mediagroup.com and you can email me through there, or you can also call me at 480-648-1122. And I just want to thank you all for listening. Without you, this would not be possible. Thank you so much.